Hi there and thanks for watching. This video is the second half of a two-part series all about how to sandcast silver and bronze jewellery using Delft Clay for beginners. I've inserted 7 photos here at the beginning just to show previous casting projects. In this video I'll cover how to prepare Delft Clay, how to fill and use a casting flask, how to use a crucible and how to pour molten metal. I'll show the whole process from start to finish. If you watch to the end of the video, I'll show results cast in bronze, polished and ready to use. To help manage the content of this video, I've had to speed up some of the clips. Okay, let's get started. I find a baking tray is perfect to prevent too much mess when handling Delft Clay. When a mould is finished with, the lumps of clay need to be loosened up again, ready to be reused. It can be chopped up with a blade. However, I prefer to recondition it by pushing it through a sieve. This gives it a very light and fluffy texture. The casting flask comes in 2 parts, a top and bottom, normally called a cope and drag. My flask always assembles the same in this way. It can be placed in either of 2 directions, ready to receive molten metal. It can be sat so the split line can be horizontal or vertical. I always pack the clay into the drag first, and it's the inside surface that receives the pattern initially, so this surface needs to be very flat and smooth. The easiest way to achieve this is to pack it from the back on a flat surface. Once the first half of the flask is filled, I cut the excess off with a blade. This also needs to be flat and level with the edges of the flask. After clearing and firming the vertical pour hole, the inside steel edges need to be cleaned of any clay that will interfere with the second half being a snug fit. This first process is the same for every time I set up the flask. This has been a soft fill and pack, sometimes needed depending on the pattern being used. Here's an example of that. The pattern I used to cast this bronze peas in a pod was freshly picked from my garden. If I had used a flask that had been tightly packed, the fresh peas would have been squashed when pushed into the clay. Here's an unfinished small pod I tried first, cast in the horizontal position. A tight pack is more often used with strong patterns, producing a better surface finish to the end castings. I find using a block of wood allows the hammering process to be a lot easier. Here's a wooden pattern I've made to demonstrate the simplest of castings in a vertical position. I'm going to set it up with the parting line running the length of my pattern. It would also be possible to set this pattern up in a horizontal position so the parting line runs around the circumference. But for simplicity, I'm going to stick with a vertical cast. Going back to that freshly prepared inside surface of the drag, I first coat this face with a parting powder to prevent the 2 halves of clay sticking together. It's evenly spread, then the excess is brushed off. I also lightly coat my pattern at the same time. This half is now ready for the pattern to be pushed in halfway to the imaginary parting line. Just a quick side note, if you have come across alternative uses for pendulums, please leave me a comment at the end of the video. I'd love to hear of your knowledge and experiences of them. Thanks. Okay, getting back to the casting. Before assembling the second half, I make sure the seal is clean and free from any previous clay and debris. The second half is now aligned, filled and packed in the same way as the first half. Now for that special moment, opening the flask to reveal the pattern left in one half. After it's carefully removed, the neatly formed cavity is revealed. With a sharp knife, I now cut a pouring cup into both sides. This is a funnel shape that receives the molten metal and directs it quickly into the cavity. It's important to firm and repack any loose clay after cutting. This ensures no loose particles of clay are dragged down into the cavity when pouring. The flask is now carefully reassembled and usually locked together with twisted wire. An elastic band works well for this, as long as it's not accidentally burnt. The mould is now all done and ready to go. This is a brand new crucible, so I'll reserve this for when casting silver. This is the one I'm using for bronze at the moment. It's been well used and has a build-up of borax that helps seal the crucible and keep the metal clean in its molten state. It's attached to a long handle thing that I made. Good steady control is important when everything is hot. For this pour, I'll tilt the flask slightly to allow the molten metal to enter down the side of the funnel. This helps prevent airlocks. My Smith's little torch provides a hot and fierce flame that's needed to heat the whole crucible and metal quick and efficiently. I'm using bronze grain in a shot bowl to load the crucible once it's received some preheat. I estimate how much is needed for the pattern, then approximately double it to allow for plenty of material weight left in the funnel. This helps gravity quickly fill the cavity. These smoky shaded safety glasses help me see the molten metal by reducing the bright glare. Preheating the crucible helps speed up the melting process. Once the bronze is molten and nearly ready to pour, I add a pinch of borax powder. This helps clean the metal. I check it's nice and fluid and ready to pour with a swirling motion, seeing that it rolls around the crucible like mercury. Keeping the heat on the spout, it's manoeuvred to be as close as possible to the funnel, and then with one quick motion it's dashed and dumped into the flask. The flask can absorb a lot of heat, so I carefully open it as soon as possible. The quicker the casting is released, the more clay can be saved from being burnt and destroyed. Here it is after quenching. Any charred clay has to be discarded and not mixed back in with the reusable clay. A small amount of flashing is inevitable, revealing where the parting line was positioned. The casting will always come out slightly smaller than the pattern. This is due to shrinkage when metal cools. After cutting my casting free, the leftover sprue can be remelted for another project. This simple and symmetrical shape is easy to clean up and polish. This is now nearly finished. I just need to cut the top back and drill a hole through it so I can fit a silver bail. So here is my finished bronze and silver pendulum. Please don't forget to leave me a comment if you have any understanding of alternative uses for pendulums. If you've not seen the first part of this video, here is a clickable link that will take you to it. Also, please click here on my funny face to subscribe to my channel. It helps a lot to have subscribers. This last link will take you to more of my creative stuff videos. Thanks for watching and ta-ra for now.